The Zephyrian War Council had seen footage of many species' elite warriors. The crystalline Vorthen with their energy manipulation. The four-armed Kethtar with their lightning reflexes. The hulking Gornax who could crush starship hulls with their bare hands. They had cataloged the strengths and weaknesses of every military force in the known galaxy. But when the first grainy surveillance feed arrived from the Outer Rim colonies, showing shadowy figures moving through a Vorthen fortress like ghosts made of death itself, the entire council fell silent. These weren't the clumsy, loud humans they'd heard stories about. These weren't the primitive apes who had barely discovered faster-than-light travel. These were something else entirely. The footage showed 12 figures infiltrating an impregnable fortress that housed 3,000 elite Vorthen guards. In 17 minutes, every guard was unconscious or dead. No alarms had been triggered. No shots had been fired. The fortress's AI systems showed no record of any breach occurring at all. The only sign that anything had happened was a small piece of cloth left behind, black fabric with two simple words embroidered in silver thread: Special Forces. Within hours, that footage had spread through intelligence networks across 17 star systems. Within days, those two words had become the most feared phrase in the galaxy. Not because of what anyone knew about these humans, but because of what they didn't know. The Zephyrian Empire controlled half the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never encountered an enemy they couldn't understand, couldn't predict, couldn't defeat through conventional means. Until now. And as reports flooded in from across their territories, supply depots vanishing overnight, communication networks going dark, entire battle fleets finding their command structures mysteriously compromised, one truth became terrifyingly clear. The humans weren't just fighting a war. They were rewriting the rules of warfare itself. The first mistake the Zephyrian Empire made was assuming the humans fought like everyone else in the galaxy. Commander Vexthal stood in the command center of the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical display with growing confusion. 3 weeks ago, the primitive human colonies in the Tau sector had declared independence from Zephyrian rule. It should have been a simple matter of deploying a battle fleet and crushing the rebellion within days. Instead, they were staring at empty space where human settlements should have been. Status report, Vexthal commanded, his chitinous voice clicking through the bridge's translation matrix. Sir, all 17 human colonies in the sector have been evacuated, reported his tactical officer, a young Zephyrian whose carapace still showed the blue tints of inexperience. No life signs detected. No defensive installations. It's as if they simply vanished. Vexthal's 4 eyes narrowed. In his 300 years of military service, he had never encountered an enemy that simply ran away before a fight. Every species in the galaxy understood the same basic principle of warfare: control territory, deploy superior force, achieve victory. The humans appeared to understand none of these concepts. Scan for debris fields. Perhaps they destroyed their own colonies to deny us resources. The sensor operator's mandibles clicked nervously. No debris detected, sir. The colonies appear to have been dismantled systematically. All useful materials removed. Even the orbital platforms have been stripped down to their base metals. This made no sense. Vexthal had studied human psychology extensively before this deployment. According to Zephyrian intelligence, humans were emotional, territorial creatures who formed strong attachments to their homes and possessions. They should be fighting desperately to defend every scrap of land, not conducting organized withdrawals with military precision. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from Admiral Krexval's 3rd Fleet in the Centauri system. Put it through. Admiral Krexval's image materialized in the hologram projector, but something was wrong. The usually composed Admiral looked shaken. His natural blue coloring faded to an unhealthy gray. Vexthal, we have a problem. My supply convoy was hit 3 hours ago. Pirates? Mercenaries? Unknown. The attack lasted 14 minutes. 17 cargo ships destroyed, but here's the strange part. They didn't take anything. They destroyed our food supplies, our ammunition, our fuel reserves, everything we need to maintain the occupation. But they left the valuable minerals and rare earth elements untouched. Vexthal felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. Survivors. That's the disturbing part. No casualties among our personnel. The attacking ships used precise weapons fire to disable our vessels and destroy specific cargo holds. They could have killed everyone, but they chose not to. Then they just disappeared. The transmission ended, leaving Vexthal staring at empty space. This wasn't how war worked. Enemies were supposed to fight for resources, for territory, for strategic advantage. They weren't supposed to conduct surgical strikes designed specifically to weaken your ability to fight while avoiding unnecessary bloodshed. Unless, pull up the human military files, he ordered. The data that appeared on his personal display made his stomach drop. Humans had indeed fought territorial wars on their homeworld, but those conflicts had taught them something that no other species in the galaxy had learned. Sometimes the best way to win a war was not to fight at all. Their military history was filled with examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through what they called asymmetric warfare. They had terms for concepts that didn't exist in Zephyrian military doctrine: guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, special forces. Special forces. Sir, the tactical officer called out, we're receiving multiple distress calls from throughout the sector. Imperial garrison stations are reporting unusual incidents. Vexthal turned his attention to the incoming reports. Fortress Station Gamma 7 had lost all external communications. The garrison was alive and unharmed, but every piece of long-range communication equipment had been sabotaged in ways that would take weeks to repair. Prison Station Delta 3 reported a massive systems failure that had opened every cell door simultaneously. The prisoners had been too confused to escape, but the message was clear. This could have been much worse. Mining platform Epsilon 12 found their entire orbital defense grid had been reprogrammed overnight. The weapons system still functioned perfectly, but they would now fire on any ship broadcasting Zephyrian identification codes. Each incident was small, surgical, almost playful in its precision. But together, they painted a picture that made Vexthal's combat experience scream warnings. The humans weren't fighting a conventional war. They were conducting a campaign of systematic demoralization. Commander, his intelligence officer approached with visible reluctance. I've been analyzing the pattern of attacks. There's something you need to see. The holographic display changed to show a three-dimensional map of the entire sector. Red markers indicated every location that had been hit by these mysterious attacks. At first glance, they seemed random, but as Vexthal studied the pattern, a shape began to emerge. The attacks formed a perfect spiral, moving inward toward the sector's central command station. How long until they reach our position? He asked, though he already knew he wasn't going to like the answer. Based on the current rate of progression, 18 hours, sir. Vexthal closed his eyes, feeling the weight of command settling on his shoulders like armor that was suddenly too heavy. In 18 hours, whatever force was systematically dismantling Zephyrian infrastructure across the sector would reach the Eternal Dominion. Signal the fleet. All ships are to maintain maximum alert status. Double the sensor sweeps. I want to know if so much as a piece of space debris moves within a light minute of this formation. But even as he gave the orders, Vexthal knew they were fighting an enemy they couldn't understand. The humans had somehow managed to strike 17 different targets across hundreds of light years simultaneously, using forces that appeared and disappeared without leaving any trace on their sensors. It was impossible, or it would have been, if the Zephyrian Empire's intelligence services had properly studied human special operations capabilities. 2,000 light years away, in a mobile command center hidden within an asteroid field, Colonel Sarah Chun reviewed the operation reports with quiet satisfaction. Her 12 teams had performed flawlessly, each one using different tactics to achieve the same strategic objective: make the Zephyrians afraid. Fear was a weapon that most galactic species had forgotten how to wield properly. They focused on overwhelming force, on technological superiority, on the simple mathematics of who had more ships and bigger guns. But humans had learned something during their long history of warfare that their alien neighbors had never needed to understand. The mind was always the primary battlefield. "Ma'am," her communications specialist approached. "We're receiving confirmation from all teams. Phase 1 is complete. No casualties on either side." Chen nodded approvingly. The hardest part of this operation wasn't the tactical challenges. Her teams were the best special forces operators humanity had ever produced. The hardest part was maintaining discipline, ensuring that in their effort to demoralize the enemy, they didn't cross the line into unnecessary killing. Humans understood violence in ways that other species didn't. They had fought wars that killed millions, had developed weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets. But they had also learned when not to use that capability. Sometimes the threat of what you could do was more powerful than actually doing it. Phase 2 preparations. All teams are in position, ma'am. We can begin infiltration operations on your command. Chun studied the tactical display, watching as Zephyrian fleet movements became increasingly erratic and defensive. Perfect. An enemy that was afraid was an enemy that made mistakes. Execute Phase 2. Rules of engagement remain in effect. We're not here to kill Zephyrians. We're here to teach them that humans are not the primitive species they thought we were. As her teams began the next phase of operations, Chun allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Zephyrian Empire controlled half the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force. But they were about to learn that in warfare, sometimes the most primitive weapons were the most effective. Fear, uncertainty, the growing realization that your enemy was playing a game whose rules you didn't understand. Within 24 hours, the phrase human special forces would begin spreading through Zephyrian communications networks like a virus. Not because of any propaganda campaign or psychological warfare operation, but because scared soldiers talk to each other. And scared soldiers, Chun knew from experience, made excellent teachers. Lieutenant Crixtal had been monitoring the security feeds of Orbital Station Nexus Prime for 6 months without incident. The massive installation served as the Zephyrian Empire's primary intelligence hub for the outer sectors, housing the most sophisticated surveillance and communication equipment in the galaxy. It was supposed to be impregnable. At 0300 station time, every security camera on Level 7 went dark for exactly 12 seconds. When the feeds resumed, 27 Zephyrian intelligence officers were unconscious at their posts. None showed signs of injury. Their workstations displayed a single message in flawless Zephyrian script. Your security has been temporarily suspended. Please stand by. Crixtal stared at the impossible scene, his training warring with disbelief. Level 7 was the most secure area on the station. To reach it, an intruder would need to bypass 17 different security checkpoints, each equipped with biometric scanners, psionic detectors, and automated defense systems. The corridor leading to Level 7 was monitored by quantum sensors that could detect the displacement of individual atoms. Nothing could have gotten past those defenses. Nothing except whatever had just done exactly that. Alert Commander Zex ran immediately. He ordered his subordinate, never taking his eyes off the security feeds. Full security lockdown. I want every available guard team converging on Level 7. As Zephyrian security forces rushed through the station's corridors, Crixtal began reviewing the surveillance data from the past hour. What he found made his scales stand on end. The quantum sensors showed no unauthorized movement. The biometric scanners had logged no unknown individuals. The psionic detectors had remained silent. According to every instrument they possessed, no one had entered Level 7 except authorized personnel. Yet 27 trained intelligence officers were now unconscious, and someone had accessed the most classified databases in the station. Sir, his subordinate's voice cracked with barely controlled panic. The guard teams report that Level 7 is empty. No intruders found. But what? The officers are beginning to wake up, sir. They're saying they don't remember anything unusual happening. As far as they know, they were just working normally when they suddenly felt very tired. Crixtal's mind raced through the possibilities. Poison gas, sonic weapons, Some kind of alien technology they'd never encountered? Each theory seemed more implausible than the last. Then he noticed something that made his blood freeze. Every single computer terminal on level 7 was displaying the same screen, a detailed schematic of orbital station Nexus Prime's defensive systems. But these weren't the schematics stored in their databases. These were improved versions, showing modifications and upgrades that didn't exist. Yet, computer analyzed the displayed schematics. Are these designs theoretically viable? The AI's response came after an unusually long pause. Analysis complete. The displayed modifications would increase station defensive efficiency by 47%. Implementation would require technologies currently beyond Zephyrian capabilities. Someone had infiltrated their most secure installation, accessed their classified databases, and left behind defensive improvements as a calling card. Commander Zexran arrived within minutes, his usual composure cracking as he surveyed the scene. Report. Unknown infiltrators accessed Level 7, incapacitated 27 personnel using non-lethal means, and downloaded classified intelligence data. No visual confirmation of intruders. No apparent means of entry or exit. Demands? Ransom message? Political statement. Krixtal gestured toward the computer screens. They left this. As Zexran studied the impossible schematics, a new message appeared on every screen simultaneously. Your people are safe. Your data is secure. We took nothing and harmed no one. We simply wanted you to know that we were here. Consider this a professional introduction. Human Special Forces. The message faded after 10 seconds, and the computers returned to normal operation as if nothing had happened. Zexran stared at the screens for a long moment before speaking. Give me a direct line to Imperial Command. Priority Alpha. As the commander placed his call, Krixtal continued studying the security footage, looking for any clue that might explain how this impossible infiltration had occurred. Frame by frame, he analyzed every second of recorded data. There, in 17 different locations throughout the station, for exactly 0.3 seconds each, the shadows moved wrong. They shifted in ways that suggested someone was moving through corridors that the cameras couldn't quite capture. It was so subtle that only the most careful analysis would reveal it, and even then, it looked more like sensor glitches than evidence of intruders. But taken together, those shadow movements traced a path from the station's docking bays to level 7 and back again. Someone had moved through their installation like a ghost, leaving behind only the faintest traces of their passage. And they had done it while carrying equipment sophisticated enough to incapacitate trained personnel without leaving any detectable residue. Ow! Krixtal whispered to himself. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Veltar, the station's chief xenobiologist, appeared on his communication screen looking haggard and disturbed. Lieutenant, I've been reviewing the biological scans from Level 7. I need to show you something. The data that appeared on Krixtal's screen was unlike anything he'd seen before. The atmospheric analysis from Level 7 showed trace amounts of dozens of different chemical compounds, each present in such small quantities that they'd almost escaped detection. What am I looking at, Doctor? Pheromones, Dr. Veltar replied grimly. Specifically, human pheromones. But not just any humans. These chemical signatures indicate individuals with extremely low stress responses, enhanced muscle efficiency, and neurological adaptations that I've never seen in baseline humans. Enhanced how? Their brains appear to process information faster and more efficiently than normal human neural patterns should allow. They also seem to have developed some kind of natural electromagnetic dampening field. It's as if they've been specifically adapted for stealth operations. Krixtal felt his understanding of the universe shift uncomfortably. You're saying these humans have been modified? Not modified, evolved, or rather, specifically selected and trained to operate at levels that approach the theoretical limits of human capability. What we're dealing with isn't just elite soldiers, Lieutenant. These are representatives of subspecies that has been deliberately developed for warfare. The implications hit Krixtal like a physical blow. The Zephyrian Empire's intelligence files on humanity were based on encounters with civilian populations and standard military forces. No one had apparently considered that humans might have developed specialized military castes. Doctor, how many humans like this do you estimate exist? Dr. Veltar's expression grew even more disturbed. Based on the genetic markers I'm detecting, and assuming they represent a normal distribution pattern, somewhere between 50,000 and 200,000 individuals. 200,000 human special forces operators, each one apparently capable of infiltrating the most secure installations in the galaxy without leaving more than chemical traces of their presence. As this realization sank in, reports began flooding in from across the sector. Similar incidents were occurring simultaneously at military installations, communication hubs, and strategic facilities throughout Zephyrian space. In every case, the pattern was identical. Impossible infiltration, no casualties, valuable intelligence compromised, and a polite message left behind. But the messages were evolving. The latest reports described communications that were becoming increasingly personal. Human infiltrators weren't just proving they could penetrate Zephyrian security. They were leaving behind evidence that they knew specific details about individual officers' personal lives. Commander Vixeniel of the 3rd Battle Group received a message that mentioned his daughter's name and her upcoming graduation from the Imperial Academy. Major Telvok found a note referring to his wife's medical condition and suggesting a treatment that Zephyrian doctors had overlooked. Captain Raxmal discovered that his personal communication logs had been reviewed and the infiltrators had corrected a mistake in his expense reports. The message was clear: we know everything about you. We can reach anyone we want, anywhere we want, whenever we want. But we choose not to hurt you. Yet, in the span of 18 hours, the human special forces had demonstrated capabilities that challenged everything the Zephyrian Empire thought they understood about warfare, security, and the limits of individual military effectiveness. More disturbing was the growing realization that these weren't random attacks or crude intimidation tactics. Every infiltration served a specific strategic purpose. Communications networks were being mapped. Security protocols were being analyzed and cataloged. Personnel records were being compiled. The humans weren't just proving they could penetrate Zephyrian defenses. They were conducting the most comprehensive intelligence gathering operation in galactic history. And they were doing it with a level of sophistication that made Zephyrian intelligence services look primitive by comparison. As Lieutenant Krixtal compiled his report for Imperial Command, one question kept echoing in his mind. If this was what human special forces could do when they were trying not to cause damage, what would happen if they decided to fight for real? He was beginning to suspect that nobody in the galaxy really wanted to find out. Supreme Admiral Krexthal stood before the Galactic War Council with the weight of an empire's fear pressing down on his shoulders. Representatives from 17 different species filled the crystalline chamber, their various forms of anxiety creating a symphony of nervous sounds. Clicking mandibles, rustling feathers, the low harmonic hums that indicated stress among the silicon-based Veltorians. The situation has escalated beyond our initial projections, he began, his voice carrying the authority of 3 centuries of military command. What began as isolated incidents has become a systematic campaign that is fundamentally altering the balance of power in 3 sectors. The holographic display materialized above the council table, showing a 3-dimensional map of Zephyrian space. Red markers indicated locations where human special forces had conducted operations. There are now over 300 such markers, scattered across an area spanning 12 star systems. In the past 72 hours, Krexthal continued, we have documented 47 separate infiltrations of high-security installations. 0 casualties among our personnel. 0 theft of material resources. But, he paused, studying the faces around the table. These were the most experienced military minds in the galaxy. Leaders who had conquered star systems and crushed rebellions across hundreds of worlds. They deserve the truth, no matter how disturbing it might be. Our entire intelligence apparatus has been comprehensively compromised. These humans have mapped our communication networks, cataloged our defensive capabilities, and compiled detailed psychological profiles of key personnel throughout our command structure. They know our operational procedures better than we do. Counselor Vexlith of the Corthonian Imperium leaned forward, her crystalline features reflecting the hologram's red glow. What you're describing is impossible. No force that small could gather intelligence across such a wide area simultaneously. That's what we thought, Krexthal agreed grimly. Our analysis suggests we're dealing with coordinated teams of operators who possess capabilities that exceed our current understanding of individual combat effectiveness. The display changed, showing detailed biometric data compiled from dozens of infiltration sites. Human Special Forces operatives appear to move faster than our sensors can track, process information more efficiently than our tactical computers, and adapt to new situations with a speed that suggests enhanced cognitive capabilities. More disturbing, they seem to anticipate our responses before we make them. General Morthak of the Gornax hegemony, whose species prided itself on pure physical superiority, snorted dismissively. Enhanced or not, they're still organic beings. Deploy sufficient force and crush them. We tried that approach, Krexthal replied, bringing up footage from the Kepler Station incident. 12 hours ago, we received intelligence indicating that a human Special Forces team was preparing to infiltrate our primary weapons research facility. We deployed 800 elite guards, activated all defensive systems, and sealed the station with what we believed were impenetrable security protocols. The footage began playing. Kepler Station appeared normal, its massive structure bristling with defensive weapons and patrolling security craft. Watch carefully, Krexthal warned. For 17 minutes, nothing appeared to happen. Then, suddenly, every defensive weapon on the station turned and began firing into empty space. Not randomly, with precision, as if tracking targets that didn't appear on any sensor. The weapons were firing at human Special Forces operatives, Krexthal explained. Operators so well concealed that our sensors couldn't detect them, but our own defensive systems could somehow track their movements. The footage showed chaos erupting throughout the station as security guards responded to alarms and defensive protocols they couldn't understand. In the confusion, several small explosions occurred at strategic points around the installation. The explosions were surgical strikes against our primary research computers, Krexthal continued. Not designed to cause casualties, but to destroy specific data relating to advanced weapons development. The humans infiltrated the most secure facility in the sector, turned our own defenses against us, and achieved their objective while we were looking for threats that our instruments couldn't detect. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Counselor Wylel Rex of the Ethereal Communion spoke in harmonics that carried undertones of disbelief. You're suggesting that these humans have developed stealth technology beyond our ability to counter. Not just stealth technology, Krexthal corrected. They're using our own systems against us. Every facility they've infiltrated, every security protocol they've bypassed, they're not just avoiding our defenses. They're co-opting them. The display changed again, showing a detailed analysis of human Special Forces operational methods. Traditional warfare doctrine assumes that opposing forces will engage according to established principles: territorial control, resource acquisition, force projection. Human Special Forces appear to operate according to completely different principles. They don't want to control territory. They want to control information. They don't want to acquire resources. They want to deny us the ability to use our resources effectively. They don't project force in ways we can measure or counter. Counselor Tralvin of the Hegemonic Alliance raised a concern that had been growing in everyone's minds. What are their ultimate objectives? What do these humans actually want? Krexthal had been dreading this question because the answer was more disturbing than any territorial ambition or resource demand. Based on their operational patterns, we believe they want us to understand something. Every infiltration, every demonstration of capability, every impossible feat they've accomplished, it's all designed to teach us a lesson about the nature of warfare itself. The chamber erupted in confused sounds as representatives struggled to process this concept. They're teaching us. Counselor Vexlith's voice carried disbelief. They're demonstrating that our understanding of military capability is fundamentally flawed, Krexthal confirmed. We measure strength in ships and weapons and soldiers. They measure strength in adaptability, information, and the ability to make an enemy doubt their own perceptions. General Morthak slammed a massive fist on the table. This is psychological manipulation, not warfare. That's exactly the point, Krexthal replied. We've been fighting the wrong kind of war from the beginning. While we've been focused on deploying superior technology and overwhelming force, they've been studying us, learning our weaknesses, developing capabilities specifically designed to counter our advantages. The display shifted to show intercepts of human special forces communications, the few fragmentary transmissions they'd managed to detect. These are excerpts from their operational planning sessions, Krexthal explained. Note the terminology they use. The translated text appeared. Target demonstrates classic over-reliance on technological solutions. Recommend psychological approach, emphasizing uncertainty and doubt. Maintain non-lethal parameters unless threat level escalates to imminent genocide. Remember, we're not here to destroy them. We're here to teach them that destruction isn't the only form of victory. The silence that followed was profound. Counselor Ylel Rex spoke slowly, as if testing each word. They could have killed us. All of us. At any point during this campaign, they could have turned their capabilities toward lethal operations. The casualty projections are significant, Krexthal agreed reluctantly. If human special forces decided to conduct elimination operations instead of demonstration operations, our current defensive capabilities would be inadequate to protect key personnel throughout the Empire. The weight of this realization settled over the Council like a heavy blanket. They weren't just dealing with a military threat. They were dealing with a force that possessed the capability to decapitate their entire command structure, but had chosen not to exercise that capability. What do they want us to learn? Counselor Tralvin asked quietly. Krexthal brought up the final piece of intelligence they'd gathered, a message that had appeared simultaneously on every command console throughout Zephyrian space exactly 6 hours ago. The message was simple, direct, and written in the diplomatic language used for formal communications between galactic powers. The Zephyrian Empire has demonstrated competence in the application of overwhelming force against conventional opponents. However, your recent expansion into human-settled territories has revealed critical gaps in your understanding of asymmetric warfare. We have conducted these demonstrations to illustrate that military superiority cannot be measured solely in terms of technological advantage or numerical supremacy. We possess capabilities that your current defensive systems cannot counter. More importantly, we possess the restraint to use these capabilities selectively. We suggest that future diplomatic relations between our species be conducted with an understanding of these realities. This concludes our educational demonstration. We trust that the lessons have been instructive. The message was signed with a simple designation: Instructor Team 7, Human Special Forces Advanced Training Division. As the implications of this communication sank in, Counselor Vexlith voiced what everyone was thinking. They've been treating this entire conflict as a training exercise. Not for them, Krexthal corrected grimly. For us. The human special forces hadn't been conducting a military campaign. They've been running the most elaborate and sophisticated military education program in galactic history, with the Zephyrian Empire serving as unwilling students. And the final examination was about to begin.